Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance for our program is provided by the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing. Today on Oklahoma Gardening, we travel to Scissortail Park in downtown Oklahoma City to see how they are creating an urban forest and how they are raising bees for honey and education. At the West Watkins Research and Extension Center in Lane, Oklahoma, we see what's buzzing around a study providing summer nectar sources for honeybees and other pollinators. At the OSU Insect Adventure, we plot the paths of the monarchs. And OSU Turfgrass Specialist Justin Moss takes us on a tour of turfgrass-type ornamental grasses that are perfect for Oklahoma.
Today we're in downtown Oklahoma City looking at Scissortail Park, and we're going to talk with a couple of their horticulturists. One, an arborist who's been tasked with managing their trees over the past year of this new planting. And also we're going to talk with one gentleman about his beekeeping program here at Scissortail. So let's go explore.
My name is Sam Grimmett. I'm the arborist here at Scissortail Park Foundation. I've been here since the grand opening event when the park was first handed over to us from the contractors that built it. My main focus here at the park is working with the trees as the arborist. We have 928 trees that were part of the initial installation. We've added approximately another 40 since then, leaving us with about 970 trees. The last year has been really quite interesting from the point of view of having 928 brand new babies. It's interesting with that number, every time that I do something to one tree, I need to do it 928 more times. So whether I'm just giving them a light prune, whether I'm watering something, whether I'm cutting tree strapping off or adding some fertilizer or even just regular compost, it has to happen that many times in order for me to complete that particular task. With a newly planted tree, really the most important thing is that as it goes into the ground, that you get the root collar at the right height. It's something that I have found to be quite an issue with trees coming out of the nurseries. It's really difficult to trust the nurseryman knows what he's doing from the point of view of the soil height. So I would like for your watchers to dig down close to the trunk and find where the root flare actually goes from vertical and tapers out into the horizontal. Where that is, I would like to have that put about 2 inches above general grade. Plant it high so it doesn't die is a really good catchphrase. The reason that it's planted high like that is that a lot of problems with trees come from root decay and armillaria, root rot, and things, just endless problems, plus the fact that it makes it really easy to add soil amendment to the ground around the tree without burying the trunk in the compost and wood chips, mulch and things like that. So I can't overemphasize the value of mulch around a new tree, especially somewhere in the kind of 4 to 6 foot range. Yeah, 4 to 6 foot wide. It stops the competition from other plant species and also keeps the ground temperature fairly level, stops the soil from drying out and from quite a few bug issues also. Around the trunk of the tree, I'd like for people to leave about a 6-inch gap between the trunk of the tree and the start of the mulch, and from there about, say, another 4 foot of mulch. We don't want for the root system to turn on itself. And so by leaving the area close to the trunk of the tree dry, it's definitely important. Watering is always a really big issue with newly planted trees. It's really important that we don't let them dry out, but then again, don't keep them wet all the time. It seems like somewhere in between every day and every third day is around about right for a newly planted tree, and probably once a week through the winter. So after a year in the ground, the trees are around about ready to be tested to see if they've established. What I mean by that is this tree capable of holding itself up? Normally the way to do that is just to grab a hold of the trunk and give it a really good shake, like so. Although the tree wiggles, the tree doesn't actually move against the ground. And so at that point in time, you can cut the stakes free of the tree and it's ready for its first haircut. I would recommend thinning out close to the trunk and also removing any codominant leaders. What I mean by that is when the two of them get started at the top together, if you fold one down, then you wind up with a main leader, which is going to be really helpful in future from the point of view of raising that tree up and getting it to have its big boy haircut. Establishment is always an interesting thought. The general rule is that it takes a tree a year for every inch of trunk at the base. So if you have a 4-inch tree at the base, you could expect that tree to take 4 years to establish itself to the extent that, or at least to have the root system that at one point in time it had before we dug it out and transplanted it. One of our tasks for the end of this year is to try and become an accredited arboretum. We currently have 70 different tree species and we're looking to find 100 different tree species before we apply for accreditation. Accreditation, in the grand scheme of things, means that we know what we're doing, that we've gone through all of the steps in the paperwork and otherwise, that each tree is labeled, it's been counted and it's been catalogued. The majority of them will have customer viewing labeling on them, but every tree will have its own individual label. It'll be tagged and then it'll be inspected yearly from the point of view of the Arboretum. One thing that was interesting recently is that we had a gift of trees from the National Arboretum. They sent us a good selection of endangered trees, or basically trees that just weren't succeeding very well in their native environments, to try and keep the biodiversity available, asking us to plant them here at the park. And I'm sure that one day somebody's going to come along and pick up a few acorns and they'll go off to the next park.
Hi, my name is Tyler Boyd. I am horticulturist here at Scissortail Park, as well as a beekeeper. At Scissortail Park right now, we currently have 2 hives. We're hoping to expand that to up to 10 hives going into next spring, 2021. The great thing about having bees at a park like Scissortail is, one, we're going to get more flowers and fruit set and seed set here at the park, which will make it more enjoyable for the guests. We're also going to have, hopefully, an educational aspect to this program, and the bees are going to be the centerpiece for the pollinators here at the park. The great thing about this box here is it is sealed up. So the bees still are able to breathe through various vent holes, but the screen allows for people to come right up to the box and view the bees and not worry about getting stung at all. So the nice thing about this box is we can take it anywhere in the park and do sort of a pop-up demonstration. The larger hives will, of course, be in the very, very back of the park, away from the public view. So here at Scissortail Park, this is going to be a collaborative event here at the park with the staff, and the park rangers are actually going to be helping us do talks with the bees, as well as interacting with the guests concerning honeybees and the pollinators overall. What we're really trying to do here at Scissortail is get people encouraged and excited about pollinators. And a lot of people's first inclination is butterflies or honey that comes from the honeybees. We're really trying to expand that to include other things like sweat bees, our other native bees, bumblebees, dragonflies, kind of the whole gamut of insects here at the park. So the great thing about honeybees is they can both visit native plants as well as non-native plants, and we have a nice assortment and mix here at the park of both of those. The great thing about having the mix is we can have native pollinators come in and visit our native plants, but we can still have things like Russian sage, which the honeybees are going to be attracted to as well. So the great thing about Scissortail Park is we have a large selection of trees, both native and non-native. The great thing about all these trees is they do flower. So going into early spring and summer, we'll have tons of blooms on our trees here, and then of course attract pollinators, including the honeybees. One of my favorite trees is actually the Kentucky coffee tree. The main reason I love it is not only does it have great fruit on it, and of course with the bees we'll get better fruit set, but it also has really nice delicate flowers in early spring. The great thing about flowering trees is for the same amount of space that you'll have a tree, you can have just as many flowers up into the canopy. Another great example are of course the Oklahoma redbuds, which will bloom early spring. And what those early spring flowers do is it helps the bees get a jump start on their production going into the summer flow, which is when they're going to get all the honey. So the main thing that we have to really focus on when we're maintaining our bee colony is just the bee health. Of course, a lot of people are familiar with colony collapse disorder. The great thing about this park is we have enough space here that we can maintain several hives. We are currently using organic treatments to treat the mites, the vero mites that get onto the honeybees. We hope to have that managed to the point to where in the future we may not have to use mite treatments at all, transitioning more towards sustainable, natural beekeeping. We hope one day to have scissortail honey. Of course, with all things, it's a very climatic variable, agriculture being apiculture as well. But we'll have extra honey for sure.
Hi, my name is Lance Swearingen, and I'm the Director of Horticulture for Scissortail Park. In a time of COVID, public gardens are a great place to get out, get in nature, and practice your social distancing. Here at the park, we have lots of programs that are designed to help you stay safe while also enjoying our beautiful park. Our OSU OKC Farmers Market here at Scissortail Park runs every Saturday through October from 9 to 1 p.m. It's an all made in Oklahoma market. All of our vendors are practicing social distancing, they're wearing face masks, and they're there to help you get the produce that you need. So come out and see us at Scissortail Park, enjoy nature, and get out in it.
We're here at the West Watkins Research and Extension Center at Lane, Oklahoma, and I'm standing out in a planting of buckwheat. The reason we're growing this buckwheat here is to provide a food source for honeybees, I'm just surrounded by almost a swarm of bees here that are working on these flowers, so they're very busy. Buckwheat is known to be a very good food source for honeybees. It's a nectar that the bees can use to make what we consider a very good quality honey. So that's one of the reasons this is here. Now, this planting of buckwheat is part of a much larger project. He was not able to be here today, but I've been working with a local beekeeper, and as we discussed raising bees in this area, one thing he told me is we have a problem in the summer in that there's many times we have long periods, especially in hot, dry summers. We'll have periods when there's just no good food source for the honeybees. So what we started doing is kind of thinking about some of the different crops that we could be growing throughout basically to keep something there, maybe 10 months of the year that pollinators could be, in particular honeybees, could be using as a nectar source to keep them with a good food supply throughout the months that they're active. So last year was the first year for this project. We put together a list of some of the different things we thought that might make good crops to provide this nectar source. And we had several different clovers last summer, one Hubam clover, which is a white clover, some yellow clover. We also had some okra, a particular variety that we saw in the literature that was supposed to be a good food source for honeybees. We had some southern peas. It was another one out there. And what else? And we also had some sesame last year. So sesame is something that it not only has the flowers, but it also has nectaries that provide nectar as a food source for the bees. So again, with the experience we've had so far, what you're looking for this is you want a crop that will be producing, that will be flowering and providing that food source for as long a period as possible, but you also want something that you can plant and have flowers there and available for the bees as quickly as possible. The buckwheat is turning out to fit that bill very well. This buckwheat planting here is about I think maybe 5 or 6 weeks old, and as you can see, it's in full bloom and keeping the bees very occupied. Some of the other ones we looked at, again, the okra and the peas, they were much longer periods to grow them up and get them to where they're flowering, and then they really didn't begin to have the volume of flowers that you have here with the buckwheat. So what we're kind of doing is to use sequential plantings of buckwheat throughout the growing month. Once we get past the frost-free period, we can plant the buckwheat and just every maybe 3 or 4 weeks plant an additional area. Again, our beekeeper keeps his bees down at the end of this field here, and he's been, as you can see, the hives are getting taller. He needs to add additional supers to provide more space for the bees for the colony to develop and to store the honey and all. So I guess I'm not a bee expert, so I can't tell you too much about that. But again, he's very, very happy with what he's seeing here with the crops such as the sesame and the buckwheat.
My name is Emily Geest, and I'm a doctoral candidate at Oklahoma State University in Kristen Baum's lab, and I study butterflies and butterfly communities. And I'm going to describe the differences between migratory monarchs and non-migratory monarchs. So the monarch butterfly has 2 forms that it can come out in every year. The migratory form, which is the most well-known form, they can live for 7 months. They have longer, narrower forewings, and the non-migratory monarch has shorter, rounder forewings. And for us in Oklahoma, we will see the first monarchs of the year in spring, usually around April, and that's the first generation that's been laid by the overwintering generation. So in March, February every year, the overwintering generation will leave Mexico and they'll get to about Texas, where they're going to breed and lay eggs and die. And then the generation that emerges from that's the first generation, and that's the one that we may see in spring. We don't usually see very many of them here, but they are a non-migratory generation, so they're only going to live a month, but they're going to keep moving northward. Near the end of their life cycle, they're going to mate, lay eggs, another generation will emerge, they'll keep moving further north, and we'll keep going through these subsequent generations, as some of them will get all the way up to parts of Canada. And the 4th generation, once we get to the 4th one, that's the generation that comes out as a migratory generation, so the one that lives longer, the one that has longer forewings. And then they emerge in reproductive diapause, so they won't mate and they won't lay eggs. And wherever they've emerged from, which can be as far as northern Canada, but it can also be anywhere from Oklahoma to northern Canada, they will start migrating all the way back to Mexico, and then the cycle starts all over again. The best time to observe monarchs in Oklahoma is during the migration in the fall, which peaks for us around September, October, and that's the generation that's moving to Mexico to overwinter in the oleoyermal fir trees.
So when we think about ornamental grasses in our garden, we usually think about big, beautiful, tall, flowing, swaying in the wind, beautiful plants. But also, if we think about it, our lawns under our feet also have beautiful ornamental grasses that kind of lay down that baseline or that palette for your backyard or your garden. And so in Oklahoma, we can grow several different types of turf grasses for our lawn. One of those that's probably the most popular in Oklahoma is bermudagrass. And so bermudagrass is actually a species that was introduced to the United States. And so it's not native to Oklahoma. However, it is ubiquitous to Oklahoma. It is everywhere. And so almost anywhere you go in Oklahoma, you're going to find bermudagrass. So it is well adapted to our environment. And actually, a lot of the grasses that are sold and marketed as sod or even as seed around Oklahoma, bermudagrass is going to be the top seller. And even at Oklahoma State University, we have a breeding program where we develop new and improved bermudagrasses that do quite well in many conditions, including some for your lawn. So another nice warm season grass, we mentioned bermudagrass earlier, but another one that's actually native to Oklahoma is buffalograss. And so buffalograss is a nice Oklahoma grass, being that it is one of the few native grasses that we can actually use as a turf grass. Now the trick here is it's got a little bit different use than the bermudagrass we mentioned earlier. Now both of these want to be in the full sun, and they don't like shade very much, but if you're out in the full sun, it can be nice choices. The thing about a buffalo grass lawn is it has that native look to it, and you can also intermix it with other native grasses if you choose, and actually that's originally what they did here at the Welcome Center at Oklahoma State University. And so this grass will spread through stolons and fill in areas. The thing about it though is if you have a little bit of bermudagrass and buffalo grass in the same area and they're competing, oftentimes the bermudagrass will just win out, especially if you're irrigating, fertilizing, and things like that. So one of the keys is make sure all the bermudagrass or other grasses for that matter are completely removed before you go in with a nice native planting of buffalo grass. Here in the Oklahoma shade, another great turf grass forest is tall fescue. Now the reason that we grow this in the shade is it is a shade tolerant turf grass. And some of our other grasses like Bermuda grass or buffalo grass do not grow well at all in the shade. So oftentimes you'll see a multi-species or at least two species growing in a lawn if you have a lot of shade. So here we have tall fescue. Oftentimes it is also kind of mixed in with another Oklahoma turf grass that can be used, Kentucky bluegrass. However, the caveat is for most of the state, if we're going to use tall fescue or tall fescue blended with Kentucky bluegrass, really the shade is about our only option for that. And shade is a relative term, right? And so we have to think about, well, how much shade are we getting? If it's a heavy, dense shade, maybe no grasses are going to grow. And you need to think about alternatives such as shade-tolerant perennials or even hardscapes. But if you have some light coming through, and these are big trees here and we have a nice stand growing, it can do quite well for you as a nice shade grass in Oklahoma. So here's an Oklahoma turf grass that can do well in the full sun or in the partial shade, and this is zoysiagrass. The nice thing about zoysiagrass is it's very tough, hardy grass for Oklahoma. So the difference with zoysiagrass and say a tall fescue or tall fescue Kentucky bluegrass blend is that with the cool season grasses, the tall fescue Kentucky bluegrass, it can grow well in the shade, but not as well in the full sun in most of Oklahoma. However, zoysiagrass, it loves the sun. It'll do quite well, and again, can tolerate that partial shade. And with the zoysiagrass, it can grow from stolons, from sprigs, and through rhizomes underground. So you can purchase sod or plugs, or even there is some zoysiagrasses you can buy a seed for it too. But what I would recommend is it's a little bit slower growing. So if you're going to go with zoysiagrass, I'd recommend just go ahead and sodding, just because you have that instant lawn, instant establishment. You can plug it, just be aware it's going to take a little while. So in the southern part of the state, we can also grow another Oklahoma turf grass, St. Augustinegrass. Now the reason I say the southern part of the state is St. Augustine grass does not have the cold tolerance as some of the other turf grasses. And so if we keep it closer to the southern part of Oklahoma, it can overwinter quite well. Now St. Augustine grass is going to have a coarser leaf texture or a wider leaf blade, but it's very popular across Texas and southern Oklahoma, can do quite well. So while your beautiful ornamental grasses can make a great border or a great addition to your landscape, don't forget about the ornamental turf grasses for your great lawn, for your backyards, for your front yards. A nice place to play, to relax, and just to enjoy the outdoors.
We will not air on the main OETA station for the next 2 weeks to make room for Pledge Drive programming, but you'll be able to catch best of Oklahoma Gardening episodes on the OETA World Channel. We wish you health and wellness, and we'll see you September 12th for more Oklahoma Gardening. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We would like to thank our generous underwriter, the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is also provided by Pond Pro Shop, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, the Oklahoma Horticultural Society, and the Tulsa Garden Club.